Hello, it's Paul Griffin back again with another story, and I think it'll take two recordings to get this one in, as I try to keep them at 15 minutes or so, because it takes so long to upload them. Um, anyways, again, I'm Paul. It's April 30th, Thursday, and I'm working at home today. I have been at Mount Royal again. Last week, Wednesday through Friday, I was there helping prep for the curbside pickup, and then this week I've been there helping with the curbside pickup by sending items down to the main library for curbside pickup. Believe it or not, it takes all day, surprisingly so, with no patrons like you. I miss the patrons. I miss that interaction, you know. We had a good time. We have a good time at Mount Royal with the patrons. So I do miss that. And I hope we can all be back together one day, very, very, very soon. Just a thought about the day. It's Thursday again, April 30th, and it's a beautiful day. I guess it's going to be in the 60s today. So enjoy it. Get outside, man. Enjoy the day. Enjoy the air, the wealth of beauty around us in this place that we live in Duluth. For it is a beautiful place on these gorgeous days that we have. I'm going to read something from the Just So stories by Rudyard Kipling, The Cat That Walked by Himself. Before I do that, though, I want to read a little bit about Rudyard Kipling. He did write children's stories, and I guess he wrote adult stories too, but I'm going to look some of those up too, and maybe I can find some adult stories. But the Just So stories are fabulous, entertaining works. I read them with students when I taught. But you know, I think a lot of the writing that's done for kids, like Winnie the Pooh, Milne, Rudyard Kipling, shoot, I can't think of it. Some of the other ones that write for children, I think a lot of their writing is actually more meaningful sometimes to adults, as you know, what they're writing about is a lot of times human characteristics. I think adults can gather that more sometimes. So a little bit about Rudyard Kipling. He told his children glorious, fanciful stories and how things in the world came to be as they are. He wrote them down for publication as the Just So stories in 1902, just 3 years after the tragic death of the daughter for whom they had first been invented. During the 20th century, generations of children were tucked into bed with readings of highly imaginative and wildly improbable explanations, such as how the elephant got his trunk. Kipling entertained his own children and those of his friends by inventing ingenious explanations of such questions as how the camel got his hump, how the leopard got his spots. In 1902, he wrote them down for publication as the Just So stories. And I'll be reading again The Cat That Walked by Himself. They are written in an amusing, grand style, peppered with long and delightfully unlikely invented words, a comical exaggeration perhaps of the formal ways of speaking Kipling heard in India. Each story includes a short poem, and the first edition of the books featured Kipling's own illustrations. Just a comment about inventing words. My dad was a fantastic word inventor. He also was a teacher, and he'd get mad, he'd invent words. He never cussed, but boy, he'd invent words, or he was just talking and he'd invent words. It was fun. I miss him a lot in those ways. And even my children talk about Grandpa Josh inventing words, and they remember some words like "gosh gumhybrin" and things like that. So it's pretty neat to have this reading today. Throughout the stories, he addresses the reader as best beloved, reinforcing the intimacy of storytelling and recalling the first best beloved, his lost daughter, Josephine. Those writing for adults fell from favor. Kipling's children's books were popular for much of the 20th century, and the Just So stories became a favorite across the English-speaking world. So I'll read again Rudyard Kipling's The Cat That Walked by Himself. I'll probably read, I printed it out in like 14 font, I guess. I didn't think it was going to be that big. It's probably close to 15 or 20 pages. So anyways, let me begin. The Cat That Walked by Himself by Rudyard Kipling. Hear and attend and listen, for this befell and be happened and became and was, O my best beloved, when the tame animals were wild. The dog was wild, and the horse was wild, and the cow was wild, and the sheep was wild, and the pig was wild, as wild could be, and they walked in the wet, wild woods by their wild lawns. But the wildest of all the wild animals was the cat. He walked by himself, and all places were alike to him. Of course, the man was wild too. He was dreadfully wild, and he didn't even begin to be tame till he met the woman, and she told him that she did not like living in his wild ways. She picked out a nice dry cave instead of a heap of wet leaves to lie down in, and she strewed clean sand on the floor. She lit a nice fire of wood at the back of the cave, and she hung a dried wild horse skin, tail down, across the opening of the cave, and she said, "Wipe your feet, dear, for when you come in, and now we'll keep house." That night, best beloved, they ate wild sheep roasted on the hot stones, and flavored with wild garlic and wild pepper, and wild duck stuffed with wild rice and wild fenugreek, and wild coriander, and wild bones of wild oxen, and wild cherries, and wild grenadillas. Then the man went to sleep in front of the fire, ever so happy. But the woman sat up, combing her hair. She took the bone of the shoulder of mutton, the big fat blade bone, and she looked at the wonderful marks on it, and she threw more wood on the fire, and she made a magic. She made the first singing magic in the world. Out in the wild woods, all the animals gathered together where they could see the light of the fire a long way off, and they wondered what it meant. Then Wild Horse stamped with his wild foot and said, "Oh, my friends, and oh, my enemies, why have the man and the woman made that great light in that great cave, and what harm will it do us?" Wild Dog lifted up his wild nose and said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, taste and try." Wild Dog gnawed his bone, and it was more delicious than anything he had ever tasted, and said, "Oh, my enemy and my wife of my enemy, give me another." The woman said, "Wild thing in wild woods, help my man to hunt through the day and guard this cave at night, and I'll give you as many roast bones as you need." "Ah," the cat said, listening, "this is a very wise woman, but she is not so wise as I am." Wild Dog crawled into the cave and laid his head on the woman's lap and said, "Oh, my friend and my wife of my friend, I will help your man to hunt through the day, and at night I will guard your cave." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "that is a very foolish dog." And he went back through the wild woods, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild lone. But he never told anybody. When the man waked up, he said, "What is Wild Dog doing here?" And the woman said, "His name is not Wild Dog anymore, but his first friend, because he will be our friend for always and always and always. Take him with you when you go hunting." Next night the woman cut great green armfuls of fresh grass from the water meadows and dried it before the fire so that it smelled like newborn hay, and she sat at the mouth of the cave and plaited a halter out of horsehair, and she looked at the shoulder of mutton bone, at the big broad blade bone, and she made a magic, and she made the second singing magic in the world. Out in the wild woods, all the wild animals wandered and wondered what had happened to Wild Dog. And at last Wild Horse stamped with his foot and said, "I will go and see and say why Wild Dog has not returned. Cat, come with me." "Nay, nay," said the cat, "I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me. I will not come with you." But all the same he followed the Wild Horse softly, very softly, and hid himself where he could hear everything. When the woman heard Wild Horse tripping and stumbling on his long mane, she laughed and said, "Here comes the second wild thing out of the wild woods. What do you want?" Wild Horse said, "Oh, my enemy and wife of my enemy, where is Wild Dog?" The woman laughed and picked up the blade bone and looked at it and said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, you did not come here for Wild Dog, but for the sake of the good grass." And Wild Horse, tripping and stumbling on his long mane, said, "Oh, that is true. Give it to me to eat." And the woman said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, bend your wild head, and where will I give you, and you shall eat the wonderful grass 3 times a day." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "this is a clever woman indeed, but she is not so clever as I am." Wild Horse bent his wild head, and the woman slipped the plaited hide halter over it, and Wild Horse breathed on the woman's feet and said, "Oh, my mistress and wife of my master, I will be your servant for the sake of the wonderful grass." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "that is a very foolish horse." And he went back through the wild, wet woods, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild lone, but he never told anybody. When the man and the dog came back from hunting, the man said, "What is Wild Horse doing here?" And the woman said, "His name is not Wild Horse anymore, but the first servant, because he will carry us from place to place, for always and always and always, ride on his back when you go hunting." Next day, holding her wild head high, that her wild horns should not catch in the wild trees, Wild Cow came up to the cave, and the cat followed and hid himself just the same as before, and everything happened just the same as before, and the cat said the same things as before, and when Wild Cow had promised to give her milk to the woman every day in exchange for the wonderful grass, the cat went back through the wet wild woods, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild lone, just the same as before. But he never told anybody, and when the man and the horse and the dog came from hunting and asked the same questions, same as before, the woman said, "Her name is not Wild Cow anymore, but Giver of Good Food. She will give us the warm white milk for always and always and always, and I will take care of her while you and the first friend and the first servant go hunting." Next day, the cat waited to see if any other wild thing would go up to the cave, but no one moved in the wet wild woods. So the cat walked there by himself, and he saw the woman milking the cow, and he saw the light of the fire in the cave, and he smelt the smell of the warm white milk. The cat said, "Oh, my enemy and wife of my enemy, where did Wild Cow go?" The woman laughed and said, "Oh, my dear wild thing out of the wild woods, go back to the wild woods again, for I have braided my hair, and I have put away the magic blade bone, and we have no more need of either friends nor servants in our cave." The cat said, "I am not a friend, I am not a servant, I am the cat who walks by himself, and I wish to come into your cave." The woman said, "Then why did you not come with the first friend the first night?" The cat grew very angry and said, "Has Wild Dog told tales of me?" Then the woman laughed and said, "Oh, you are the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to you. You are neither a friend nor a servant. You have said it yourself. Go away, and walk by yourself in wild places alike, in all places alike." The cat pretended to be sorry and said, "Oh, must I never come into the cave? Must I never sit by the warm fire? Must I never drink the warm white milk? You are very wise and very beautiful. You should not be cruel even to a cat." The woman said, "I knew I was wise, and I did not know I was beautiful, so I will make a bargain with you. If ever I say one word in your praise, you may come into the cave." And if I say 2 words of praise, and if you say 2 words of praise, the cat asked. I never shall, said the woman, but if I say 2 words of your praise, you may sit by the fire in the cave. And if you say 3 words, said the cat. I never shall, said the woman, but if I do say 3 words in your praise, you may drink the warm white milk 3 times a day for always and always and always. Then the cat arched his back and said, "Now let the curtain at the mouth of the cave, and the fire at the back of the cave, and the milk pots that stand before the fire, remember what my enemy, the wife of my enemy, has said." He went away through the wet, wild woods, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild lone. That night, okay, I'm going to stop there, I think, sorry. It's been about 15 minutes, and this is good. I like this. I hope you like this. I hope you like all the readings that you've seen on the website, on the library, Duluth Library website for the adults, and there's also has been kids readings on Facebook and such. I'm not sure if they'll keep going, as a lot of people got laid off at the library. You heard about that, so I'm not sure what's going to happen with the other readings. But and we'll miss them if they don't continue. But anyways, thanks for listening. Have a good and blessed day. Enjoy the outside. Enjoy going outdoors. The day is beautiful. Don't take it for granted. Thank you. Bye-bye.